Online debates about theme park narratives have existed since the dawn of the internet, but have reached a fever pitch recently with the age of influencers and theme park bloggers. Every time Disney alters an attraction, fans cry, "They're ruining the story!" But what is the story of a theme park attraction? When designers, the Disney Imagineers, are asked about the stories behind their creations, their answers are often strangely vague.
Well, the original Imagineers came up with such great storylines for all these people. Although they're not exact, you can kind of have fun with your own imagination and think about who Master Gracie was, or who Madame Leota was, or, who the hitchhiking ghosts were.
Concepts like audience response, exposition, backstory, and setting are all lumped together under the umbrella of story. So, why does story become so abstract when discussing theme park narratives? Is it simply because theme parks represent a different live medium than books or movies? Well, we don't encounter similar issues when discussing theatrical experiences or even escape rooms. Is there even one correct interpretation of any theme park narrative? And if there isn't, how can we judge whether a theme park narrative is good if we can't even define what a storyline is in this context? Well, as a pedantic and analytical theme park nerd, I need answers. This sounds like a quest. At its core, while abstract, the term story usually refers to the narrative, a sequence of events involving characters and a setting. It has a beginning, middle, and end, though not necessarily in that order. Now, in the case of classic theme park storytelling, the central focus involves the guest's journey through a themed environment, and it rarely aligns with the focus of online fan theories, which revolve around intricate backstories of characters. You won't believe how the Hatbox Ghost lost his head. Compare this to how film critics analyze movies. Their focus is the narrative presented on screen. Most significant narratives feature some kind of conflict and resolution, plus a change in the character that justifies telling the story in the first place. You don't tell a story like, "I was thirsty. I got up, went to the fridge, and drank some milk." The response would be, "Okay, so what?" Instead, you tell a story about running out of milk and going on an adventure to get more, or not knowing how to fix something and figuring it out. But do theme park attractions have central conflicts we can identify? And how do we define the characters and the source of these conflicts? What kind of character change occurs throughout these stories? We'll address these questions, but remember that the story here is not exposition or setting. Consider all the backstory debates. Instead of encouraging a simpler understanding of narrative, the online community focuses on the origins of the Haunted Mansion's ghosts, their past lives, their motivations, their relationships, and not on the guest experience. Generations grew up with the Haunted Mansion, charmed by its atmosphere and ghosts, only for the internet to bury its brilliance under layers of convoluted lore. Imagine we tried to do the same with something like the film Jurassic Park. Silas T. Blackwood, born in a small Scottish mining town in 1854, was captivated by geology from a young age, amassing a collection of unusual stones. But Silas wasn't content with simply collecting, he yearned to create. As a self-taught chemist, Silas dedicated years to experimenting with minerals and metals, driven by an almost obsessive desire to forge a new superior material. His neighbors often complained about the strange smells and loud noises emanating from his workshop. Then, in 1888, after numerous failed experiments and near-disastrous explosions, Silas achieved his breakthrough. Combining basalt, obsidian, and a secret blend of rare earth elements, he crafted a material unlike any other, incredibly strong, lightweight, and possessing a deep, lustrous black color. He called it simply Black Rock. Black Rock's exceptional strength and durability eventually garnered the attention of architects and engineers. Decades later, when John Hammond, the visionary behind Jurassic Park, sought a material that would convey both the power and mystery of his dinosaur creation, he recalled the legend of Silas's Black Rock. He tracked down Silas's descendants, who still possessed the secret formula, and commissioned them to create the gates that would become synonymous with his ambitious and ultimately ill-fated project. Silas Blackwood died in 1922, a relatively unknown inventor, but his legacy endures in the symbol of Jurassic Park, a testament to his relentless pursuit of innovation and the unexpected ways in which human ingenuity can shape the world. And this is the story of Jurassic Park.
Pretty absurd, right?
The story of Jurassic Park ultimately is not how the gates were built. Sorry, Silas. Even if the set designer creates a story-based reason for things, well, that's beyond the audience's scope. It's what happens to the characters that matters, which brings us to... In basic story structure, a protagonist wants something, an antagonist stands in their way, and a mentor character explains how to overcome the obstacle, often through personal growth of the protagonist. The character can't overcome the obstacle at the beginning, the story events allow them to level up, which is why they're really an obstacle in the first place. Now, theme park attractions don't have this, right? I mean, ultimately, they aren't really narratives. I mean, at least that's what the Imagineers often say. But if you listen to how Walt Disney describes Pirates of the Caribbean,
people are going to get on a boat here, ride through the lagoon, and when we get around here, we're going to take them down a waterfall and take them back into the past, back into the days of the pirates, where the Caribbean area was full of pirates and they're always ransacking towns and things. Oh, that's only part of it. Got a big climactic scene, but how could you top it? Well, we set the place on fire, and we have the audience trapped down in this flaming city. And how can they get out then? Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we'd get them out? By going up the waterfall? That's right! Anything's possible at Disneyland.
Yeah, that sounds like a clear narrative to me. You have main character, park guests, antagonist, waterfall. Mentor character would be the pirate skull or the narrator who talks to you before you go down that first drop. By overcoming the waterfall, we find our way back to civilization. Haunted Mansion is really similar to this. All that chatter about who owns it, who live there, it doesn't matter. We go in, we get trapped, and we escape. Well, almost. Hitchhiking ghosts and all that. The story and song of the Haunted Mansion with young Ron Howard demonstrates this. The mansion is almost a character itself. The ghost host explains the conflict. Survival.
Which offers you this chilling challenge. To find a way out.
Classically, protagonists are defined by a single concrete want. Some categorize this as quests for money, sex, or God. I generally prefer status, relationship, and meaning. Now, in the real world, theme park guests just want to go on a fun ride for a few minutes. But in the story of the theme park attractions, the narrative usually falls into one of three categories: exploration, survival, mission. Exploration stories like Peter Pan's Fly, Frozen Ever After, Soarin' are about sightseeing. It's all about the oohs and ahs, often really don't feature any identifiable conflict, and they rise and fall on the success of how interesting the environment is that you're exploring. Survival stories like Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway start out a little bit like exploration, but very quickly trouble arises. You have to fix things or not die. Mission stories warn us of danger and empower us to act. You can see Dinosaur, or even something like Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor.
See that giant canister? That's when we collect your laughter. The more you laugh, the more power we collect.
By the way, check out my theme park story type video for more about these story types and how they affect a day in the park. Bet you can't guess which park has the most survival stories. And speaking of survival and getting back to the Haunted Mansion, yes, this is a survival story. The house is keeping you trapped and you want to escape. This is an element that, beyond the fact that, yeah, ghosts are cool, elevates it above something like Spaceship Earth or Living with the Land. Exploration rides that lack a problem that needs to be solved. Now you can contrast the Haunted Mansion, a survival story, to something like Tower of Terror, a mission story, because in this attraction, a mystery is set up and the audience is asked to join.
We invite you, if you dare, to step aboard, because in tonight's episode, you are the star. And this elevator travels directly to the Twilight Zone.
The antagonist, again, is the Tower, and the mentor, Rod Serling, guides us through and provides the summary of what we learned at the end of the story.
The next time you check into a deserted hotel in the dark side of Hollywood, make sure you know just what kind of vacancy you're filling.
Typically, you think of a protagonist having a transformation, from street urchin to prince, social outcast to princess, housemaid to princess. Yeah, no wonder kids think they're entitled to be king of the world. In the theme park world, you have, well, us, tourists. What sort of transformation do we have? Well, in the Haunted Mansion, we go from ignorant about the Haunted Mansion to trapped by the Haunted Mansion to ultimately soon-to-be residents of the Haunted Mansion. Remember, hitchhiking ghosts are going to haunt us until we return, right? In the Twilight Zone, we go from ignorant about what happened on Halloween night to trapped by the tower to wiser, having learned something from the experience. Theme park mentors have a tough job. We have limited interaction, and their dialogue is often exposition. But a strong mentor makes or breaks an attraction. Now, some attractions have the luxury of a mentor we already know, like Indiana Jones, or Roger Rabbit, or Hondo Anaka. Okay, that last one's more of a deep cut. But there are some quick shortcuts to making us interested in the mentor and making them a strong character. One of them is to make them funny.
Hello there.
Another is to make them very capable or talented. These are both shortcuts that writers use all the time to make characters more appealing to us. Now, if you've paid close attention to classic films, you realize they often have a scene towards the end where the mentor character and the protagonist shake hands, so to speak. This usually happens right after the main conflict is resolved, and it creates a nice button to the plot. Even in films where the mentor character dies, often the movie has a way of bringing them back. The best theme park attractions do the same thing. You escape the Haunted Mansion, and you escape the rolling ball of the temple, and you escape the First Order, and you escape the Yeti, and oh wait, where is the mentor? Yes, not all theme park attractions have a mentor, and this is not usually to their benefit. Without a character with a great send-off to you, well, you often end up not sure what to make of what you just experienced. That being said, just because you end with a mentor doesn't mean the ending is great. It just makes it more complete. Okay, so we've got our characters, our protagonist, our antagonist, our mentor, but what sort of plot structure do theme park rides follow? If you're familiar with writing, you might have heard of the book Save the Cat, which attempts to distill all Hollywood screenplays into a standardized set of story moments, and yeah, pretty much proves its point. Theme park rides are even easier to identify in many ways because they're shorter and they're less complicated. They are as follows: the approach, the hook, escalation, core, tightening, finale. Let's discuss. Unlike film or books where creators have little control as to how the audience begins to engage with the work, could be from a book cover or a thumbnail or another thumbnail, in the theme park world, designers have complete control as to the initial encounter with the attraction. There may be multiple ways to get there, but nearly all attractions have a single entrance, and so the tone of the scope of the attraction can be signified early. Now, in the film world, often characters start in a very different spot than they end up, like rags to riches. In the theme park world, designers will cleverly give a contrast of what is coming later as well. In the dinosaur attraction, we see living dinosaurs, so of course the queue is full of dead dinosaurs. The Haunted Mansion takes us past a static graveyard and ends in a lively graveyard. Pirates of the Caribbean begins with a tranquil swamp and ends with a town on fire. This is something that sets theme park attractions from something like a roller coaster, which often has to fully reveal its hand because, well, it's just too big to hide. unless you're lightning rod and you just have the advantage of a big mountain. The next part of the attraction is the hook, the attention grabber that beckons us to join the story. And yeah, this part can be a little info dumpy, but if the mentor character is entertaining, we don't usually care. Also, exposition that directly relates to the conflict tends to be interesting and engaging. That being said, some hooks are better than others. And this is where a theme park story can become contrived in a hurry.
Okay, folks, look, the show is all the way across town, but I got you a really fast car.
In a movie, there's a catalyst or a call to adventure moment where the story really kicks into overdrive. Theme parks take this to the next level with literal motion. Often, a moment occurs early on where writers speed up or experience a thrilling element to launch them into the story. Or, in the case of pirates, plunge into the story. Other notable examples of this include Dinosaur.
Watch autopilot on homing signal now! Hang on!
Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, Flight of Passage, Star Tours. This often features the iconic scenes that will be all over the advertising for this thing. Something you can slap on pins, t-shirts, postcards, toothpick holders, etc. A moment that you might not have noticed, but certainly will now, is a tightening moment where things escalate even further. Now, in a typical story, this is where the walls are closing in for the protagonist as tensions and conflict escalate. In the theme park world, often the walls literally do close in on you. You end up going into a much smaller space than the larger rooms, which gives a sense of danger and claustrophobia. Compare the narrow dart room to the cavern of bubbling death in Indiana Jones' Adventure, or the Haunted Mansion's narrow and tight attic to its grand graveyard finale. This is also where the ultimate showdown between the audience and the antagonist is featured, like in the iconic Dipmobile scene in Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin. Attractions usually end with a big show scene as a grand climax. They typically work best when they are set up in advance. For example, the asteroid impact in Dinosaur is clearly indicated from the beginning. The encounter with the Yeti is a culmination of seeing the Yeti's destruction and its silhouette. The Blue Fairy making Pinocchio a real boy is the end of his journey. These scenes are made even more impactful when you include the mentor character to finish things off. So are the Imagineers who speak about story and talk about audience reaction and backstory and setting completely getting it wrong? Not exactly. They're speaking to the placemaking and world building needed in order to make an attraction believable. But the ultimate point is a good theme park attraction is about crafting an experience. And it's about taking the audience, which becomes the protagonist for a ride, literally and figuratively, and leaving them with a feeling. And, as I mentioned earlier, a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of excitement, wonder, maybe even a little bit of terror. And you'll find that the most memorable theme park attractions do this through a combination of clear stakes, solid story points, and some memorable characters. Just, stop debating the backstory of Constance Hatchaway, please.